Five, four, three, two, one. Good evening, Steve. Here
Good
we
evening,
are.
Nate.
0 and 4 for the first time since 1974. I don't even think you were born then. Were you, Steve?
No, I wasn't born yet. No, even my brother wasn't born
So,
yet.
yeah. So uncharted territory for us here at Florida State. But to the post game chop up with Nate and Steve at the Voice of College Football. Florida State loses to Louisville 31-20. Had a lot of chances to tie the game and also take the lead. You know, the defense played a great second half. What are your instant thoughts, Steve?
You know, as I said right before, I don't know. For 4 years, this team has just found new ways to not win. What is that? And it's just it's frustrating. But you know, I think some good changes were made in the second half, and it might be the best coach second half we've had in, I don't know, since Prue was here, maybe. It was just, I mean, it was a well coached. There were some questionable decisions, going for it on fourth down on, at the end. But I personally wouldn't have done that. But I mean, we got lucky. We got a break and it worked out, only for it to go nowhere after that. But, so there were some positives. I wouldn't say it's a moral victory. It's a loss, and it's certainly nothing like the Notre Dame game or anything like that. But it was a good second half. Just wish the first half we could have found a linebacker or a safety just to make some kind of play. They just killed us across the middle in that first half, and we had no answer for it. And yeah, we at some point, somebody's got to make a play. Keir Thomas, what if he catches that interception and runs it back for 6? How much difference does that change the game? The play is there, but it's just frustrating, Nate.
Yeah, so, looking at that game, I agree. It was a tale of two halves. First half, the team was awful on both sides of the ball. Really questioning if Fuller was gonna make it after today. I'll give them props on that second half. They did a much better job on third down, which was pretty frustrating for a team that was 109th or something like that in the country on third down coming into the game. They converted on their first eight and nine. Score on the 5 drives, and I think most of us maybe thought the game was over at halftime. But Florida State came out. The defense played a ton. They played a damn good half. The offense let them down in the second half, but I think overall the defense was much better coached, and I think that the defense just played better. They executed more.
Yeah.
But you look
at there were some changes, some adjustments, but they just played better. They executed.
It looks like they went to spying Cunningham too at certain points of the game. But real quick, let's look at some of the stats. Cunningham had 264 in the air, 2 on the ground, or 2 in the air, 2 more on the ground for 54 yards. They had 41 carries, and they didn't run the ball very well on FSU. I think a lot of it was just they were able to sustain drives. They came out and they bust that big one to start the game. But they did a good job keeping the Florida State offense off the field in the first half. It was like 41 plays in the first half. Well over I think 19 minutes of time. I forget exactly what it was, but
yeah, it was like 19,
70% again. So again, it's another game where Florida State's defense at some point couldn't get off the field, and we've seen it where it's either the first half or the second half. The defense has, they have a time during the game where they play really well, and then they have others give up 31 points and look awful. And so let's just address number one. Is it to let her go, or do you ride it through the season?
Personally, no matter how bad it gets right now, with pretty much all of the coaches, especially the coordinators, you ride it through the season, because one thing we've just missed so much for the last half decade is just consistency. And whether Fuller's doing a good job or Dilly's doing a good job or not, it'll be worse for Florida State if we make a change mid-season. So whether there needs to be a change or not, it doesn't need to be happen until after the season is done, just because it's going to just, like any of the development that we have seen, which we have seen development, and we've seen better fundamentals and stuff like that, and things, as hard as it is to see it at 0-4, there are things that have improved. So we lose all of that and we start back at 0 if we make a change right now mid-season. And then it almost throws 2022 away as well. And that's just, I don't think that's the right decision at this time. And that's not to excuse Fuller or say, he's doing a good job or anything like that. That's just the reality of where we are. But when you, like we said last week, when you fire a coach after a year and a half and you make constant changes, head coaching coordinators, you put yourself in that position to where at some point you're going to have to ride it out. And we got to ride it out at this point.
Yeah, so FSU Gnome here says we lost, but we didn't look lost. We need better horses in the stable. Well said.
Yep.
That I think that was the game that Florida State won, but they just couldn't make the play. That's what it comes down to is, Jashawn Corbin played a hell of a game. 14 and a half yards per rush, 11 carries, 159 yards. He played really well. But you look on the outside, Parchment had his best game. He had 5 catches for 86 for a touchdown, but he also had a couple just head scratching plays, on late in the game when Milton, he had no one on him. He had someone. I have to look at it again, but instantly, I think he had someone 12 yards off him at the bottom of the screen, and Milton tells him to go deep, and he breaks his route off. That's some continuity with a new guy. But after Parchment, Wilson had 5, Corbin had 4, McDonald had 2, Ward 3, McLean 3. But you don't have anyone who stretches the field. And I like the fact that Florida State was taking some deep shots, trying to force Louisville to trust that part of the offense. Mm-hmm. But it comes down to my opinion that Florida State doesn't have the players just to finish it off. And we saw it at Jacksonville State, Notre Dame. We've seen it every this year that Florida had a chance at some point to make a play to either win the game or stay in the game, and they just can't get it done. Mm-hmm. So that's what it comes down to. I think that's a good point from FSU Gnome.
And another thing on that, like, I think it's getting overlooked a little bit in that first half is we're down Lovett, and after like the first drive, we're down Briggs. And that's when Louisville had any success they had on the ground was whenever it was Cooper or another, backup defensive tackle, and at some points it was Cooper wasn't even in there. So you had, Farmer got some of his first playing time, Jackson and Ray, they're coming along, but they're not ready to be able to carry, and we need with our linebackers and corners, we need that. So if we have even a little bit more depth on the defensive line, to where when we down 2 defensive tackles, we don't have some of those issues. That hurt us some in the second half too. We saw Briggs come back and have a really good second half. That's part of the reason why we played better in the second half. Simple as if we have a deep threat at receiver, a better receiver, if we just have a true offensive tackle out there and we have somebody like Hunter and the defensive backfield just to make a play, it's a completely different ball game. How many times were our offensive drives derailed because Scott got beat on the edge? It's his first game back, sure, but you can't stop moving your feet like that and just get beat on a speed rush. And he did it several times, and it killed us. It killed drives.
Mm-hmm. So Jonathan Chaparro has a little comment here, which, we can discuss a little bit. First half defense was terrible. They scored on 5 of their 6 first half drives, 4 of them touchdowns. It's a lot of pressure on the offense centered around the running the ball to play down big because of the defense at the first half game. The defense couldn't cut the field. 8 and 9 on third down for a team that was god awful coming in. Florida State again, second or third play of the game, they busted deep ball and they punched Florida State in the face, and Florida State doesn't react well, and Louisville's all over them in the first half. I think that if that game was a little bit closer at halftime, I think we would have seen a different story because Florida State was having a lot of success running the ball, and unfortunately they were in a predicament where they couldn't go run heavy. They had to get points. It came down to the possessions battle and trying to get as much points as you can versus eating clock by running the ball. So kind of get, where Florida State was coming from, but that first half is definitely, in my opinion, the tail of the game.
Mm-hmm. Well,
in a lot of ways, offensively and defensively.
Yeah, but how much, like in regards to being down, how much does it change if Fitzgerald makes those kicks and instead of being down, that took 4 points off the board. So instead of being down, 8 at the end or 11, for a while there, we were down 11, we're down 7. Now we can run the ball and run it down their throats and get a touchdown, tie it up, and, go get down and get another touchdown, continue to run the ball down their throats and put pressure on their offense to actually do something. So, those missed kicks, they hurt too.
Mm-hmm. So I know there's a lot of people in the comments saying that, kind of hinting we're happy with a moral victory of FSU having a good second half, and also that Norvell just needs to go ahead and pull the Band-Aid off and fire Fuller. First, I think neither one receiver or I are very happy with the loss. For FSU to go 0-4 with the importance of the season, a lot of stuff that's writing on it. No, we are not happy with a moral victory. What we're looking at is evaluating what we saw right after the game ends, and we saw a team that did compete in the second half, which is something we haven't in the past couple of years. But it just comes down to this team doesn't have the playmakers to get it done. And the defense put themselves in too much of a hole in the first half. And as far as it comes down to moving on from Fuller, Steve and I have a little bit different of an opinion on that. My opinion is that, at the end of the day, something's not working. And it starts at the top. Leadership starts at the top. So, something's not clicking. And I'm not saying that Randy Shannon's the answer. Maybe JP takes over play calling. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if Fuller's the guy because something is not connecting for these guys to have consistent effort. And I do believe that it is part coaching and part player. Florida State doesn't have the players on offense out wide. They don't have anything in the middle. And these teams are just, when it matters most, they're picking on the linebackers or they're picking on a safety. And Florida State doesn't have the parts on that part of the defense in order to be consistently good. And here we are. I do differ from Steve on the coaching chain needing to happen, but let's do some more comments and questions. So, before I get into that, this is the post-game chop up with Nate and Steve on the Voice of College Football. Make sure you're listening to the Voice of College Football call-in show every Wednesday at 8:00. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Florida State fans pondering the same questions of what we're talking about now, 0-4, and is it time to make wholesale changes? Steve, let's talk a little bit about quarterback play. I kind of thought that there was a chance maybe we see Chuba coming out in the second half because Milton just wasn't getting it done. FSU's 0-4 now. Is it time to go ahead and go youth movement at quarterback?
I don't know. It goes back to what we were saying last week. Is Chuba ready? If he's not ready, and these are questions we don't know the answers to. Norvell, Dillingham, they know the answers to these questions. We don't. So the question is, okay, is he physically ready? If he's not, you don't play him. Is he mentally ready? If he's not, you don't play him, because those things can, if they're not, they can do damage. If he's physically and mentally ready to play and he's just not quite as good as Milton is right now, then yeah, maybe you make a change, because he'll be that kind of play will be able to grow and with the experience. But if he's not physically or if he's not mentally ready, you can do damage. So by playing him now, it's like, do you potentially risk the future just for some snaps now? Especially whenever, if he's not as good, like, it could make this team even worse and hurt the future. So do you do that? I don't know the answer to that, because we're not, that's one thing, like, haven't been a coach, like what you see in practice and in the game are often two completely different things, so that's why it's like, I laugh sometimes when fans and parents did it when I was coaching, like they would call for different things or ask for different things, and I'm just like, you have no idea, and that you just don't know what's going on in practice to really make those calls. So I don't know, I probably would lean on just continue to try to build with Milton, and or if Travis comes back, either one, pick one. If Travis is hurt and he just can't play, which it seems to be the case tonight, and he comes back and you think he's the guy to help us eke out some wins this year, then you build with him and continue to go. If not, and it's Milton, you build with him and continue to go and try to build some consistency with the offense and not just continue to make changes and switches. So I personally would just ride with whatever, either Milton or Travis, and just let those young guys learn. We've been lacking that so much by pressing young guys into service too early, especially on the offensive line and everywhere. And instead of just letting them sit back and learn, just sit back and learn. And whenever you get your chance, now you come out and play.
So he had a couple games last year. My whole thing is that the offense is limited with both quarterbacks. When you look at Travis in terms of the consistency of being a thrower, and then you look at Milton, he just doesn't have the power in the arm anymore. I know that came from his legs, and he didn't have a great arm anyways at UCF.
Right.
Just throws he needed to make. But the thing with him is that he was so athletic, and he could get out of the pocket. He could throw different arm angles. He could, put a lot of stress on the defense because he could get out of the pocket and find the guy downfield. And he's just, I don't want to say clumsy, but he doesn't trust the leg, and that's impacting his play. Quite a few times today in the second half, he take grass sacks, or instead of running it straight up on third down, he tried to cut it out towards the sideline and cause himself not getting the first down. So that's where my question is that I don't know if Chuba Purdy is the answer. He gives you a little bit of both of that with the throwing and the ability to run, but me, I haven't been the biggest proponent of Jordan Travis as the quarterback of this team. But I do wonder if they go back to him as a season passes, because you have to have that threat running the ball, because Florida State just doesn't have that playmaker to trust permanently outside. So you have to pretty much different things to get the ball down the field. And Milton's a great story, and I would love nothing for him just to get it together. Lead bowl. But now Florida State's 0-4, and I think we can go ahead and forget about a bowl this year.
Oh yeah, that's clear. That's clear.
But you and I both said the schedule wasn't as tough as everyone made it out to be. Clemson loses to NC, but Clemson's not Clemson in the past couple of years. They're having a lot of problems running the ball. That's really hampering their quarterback play. But that's another story. I kind of wish you could have some Clemson problems right now. But
it's not as tough.
Go ahead.
It's not as tough in regards to, preseason. People are looking like, oh, well, we're going to play, 4 top 10 teams. We might not play at the end of the year. We might not have played any top 10 teams. But when you look at Wake Forest and, NC State's have been up and down, and Boston College and stuff like that, and those top 10 teams will still end up being top 25 teams, but there might be about 3 or 4 others that are top 25 type teams. So instead of playing 4 elite teams and a bunch of, average teams, now it looks like we're going to play no elite teams, but a bunch of, 8 or 9 top 25 teams, in terms of winning, with this team, I'd almost take the top 10, 4 top 10 teams and a bunch of average teams, because then you can go, 7-5 or 8-4, but with this team playing a bunch of top 25 teams, you see what we see.
Great question here from Dylan Reddick. Why are other second-year coaches like Pittman at Arkansas, Randa at Baylor in college, Lane Kiffin, Mel Tucker, why are they having success so far this season in year 2? But Norvell now goes to 3-10 as head coach of Florida State.
It's something I handle
first.
What's that?
I'll let you hit that one first. I'll follow up on you after that one.
It's one thing I've hit at home a couple of times on Twitter this week, and I talked about it a little bit last year as well, when some of the same things got brought up, and even under Taggart, same thing. It's hard to compare different situations. Each situation, Arkansas or Boston College or any of those, each situation is unique, and they have their own issues. And sometimes, it might be a 4-8 team that you take over, but they don't really have a whole lot of underlying issues. And, it's just, for whatever reason, it's just a bad year. They made a coaching change, and now all of a sudden, you saw that with Florida, and they make the coaching change, Mullen, all of a sudden now they're in the SEC championship game. But sometimes you take over a team and there's just a complete mess from top of the organization down to the bottom, and you've had years, of issues and lots of underlying issues. So I can't specifically say why they are having those, issues, or why they're not having some of the same issues. I'm not very familiar with, Arkansas and Boston College and some of the other teams, Ole Miss and stuff like that, and the issues that they had. So why are they able to have success and Florida State isn't, this quickly? I don't know. I mean, without knowing those specific issues and stuff like that, there's teams that you can turn around quickly and there's teams you can't. And Florida State is a team, it's not going to turn around quickly. If we made a coaching change right now or after this year, it's still not going to be a quick turnaround. It's just not, until we can get some playmakers and stuff like that in here. So I don't know why those teams were able to quickly turn around, but I know Florida State, no matter who the coach is not a quick turnaround. It's just not. And the quicker Florida State fans face that and realize that, the less heart attacks we'll have as a fan base.
So let's look at Boston College. Boston College. Steve Adazio, I thought was a good coach,
Mhm.
and one thing that he always did well was evaluate really well and on the defensive line. Really good in the trenches. So I think that college is always a tough team. They did a good job of having a good cupboard stocked up, and Halfley coming over from Ohio State had a little bit of hype with him as an up and coming coach, able to get the kid from uh Notre Dame to come over and play quarterback. And you could look at Ohio State, and since he's left, problems on that side of the ball where he came from. And you look at Mel Tucker coming off the Saban tree. I think that what's more surprising is him and Pittman at Arkansas. I think those are the two that really makes it a little bit of a legitimate question. Why are they having success in Florida State when you perceive them having more talent? Why do they continue to struggle? I think what it comes down to, one, is that there's a better culture there. And I know there was a ton of debate on the culture on the program. I think there's a ton, much better culture at those programs. I think there was a little bit better development, and also they started talking about today on Twitter was Kendall Briles has that offense at Arkansas, and Kendall Briles came to Florida State and was pigeonholed because of Willie Taggart. Now he goes over to Arkansas and has free reign of that, and they're doing quite well. Mel Tucker is a really good coach and played a really big part in Saban's success at Alabama. In terms of Dave Aranda, he's a great defender, one of the best defenses in the country. But it comes down to, from my opinion, why you don't see FSU having success is Norvell. They don't have the playmakers. They don't have a great culture. And I don't necessarily like the defensive staff other than Coach Woodson. I'll be honest with you. And I think that's why we're at where we're at. So I think that could be a whole podcast in and of itself. Do you have a comment on that?
Regarding the defensive staff, and I don't necessarily even disagree with you on it, but it's just one thing that it makes me, it's a little bit ironic because if you look at defensive line from this year to last year, a lot of improvement. Some of it's new players, but even like with Briggs and Lovett and McClendon, there's been a lot of improvement. You look at the linebackers and with Coach Marv from last year to this year, a lot of improvement. We got a lot of deficiencies, but they're playing, better. Deloach is significantly better than he was last year. Lundy's playing a lot better than he played last year. Gainer's make some bad run fits, but as a group, they're playing much better. That's why our run defense is not as good as it is if those guys aren't playing well. But you look at defensive back, are those guys playing any better than they were last year? Is Dotson better than he was last year, which he was hurt a lot last year, but is Jones any better than he was last year? Is Green any better than he was last year? So it's just, I don't, like I said, I don't disagree with you on the comment in general, but when you look at the actual improvement positionally, the one we've seen the least amount of improvement out of is the defensive backs. And I love Woodson. I don't think Woodson is the issue. But I just thought it was a little bit ironic whenever you said that, thinking about the improvement we've seen. Now, obviously, there's big time recruiting issues with Marv and Odell, but anyways, I don't know. That's what I was just kind of thinking of whenever you said that. But I think you're right. Culture-wise is probably the biggest issue. You take over a team that still has a good culture and has been developed for 4 years, it's a quick turnaround. But you take over a team that has terrible culture and a bunch of cancers and has had very little development at just about every position for 5-6 years and no accountability, it's a tough change and it's a long rebuild. And Florida State fans don't want to hear it, but that's where we're at. You can put PJ Fleck here, you can put Matt Campbell here, and we're having a lot of the same issues because, we just have some big time issues that we had to deal with. And the only thing that's going to change is recruiting our way out of it and changing the culture. And that's it. And that's what Norvell has been focusing on. Whether he's successful at it in the end remains to be seen, but he's definitely focusing on that and trying to. So,
you know, Travis J doesn't make the call to line up 10 yards off the wide receiver on third and I think that's on the coaches. But you know,
you know how much we actually you said, hold on, no, hold on. Because see, I had this debate with somebody, and he said, "Oh, we don't ever press. Why don't we ever press?" And I went back and looked at, I haven't rewatched this game. I went back and looked at Wake Forest last week, and he's like, "We don't ever press. We never press. Third and long, we never pressed." And first off, if we got twins, you're not pressing a whole lot on twins because you're gonna get rub routes and stuff like that. And same thing with trips. It happens on occasion. But when it comes to like with single coverage, we're almost always pressing, and we press a lot. Even tonight, I was sitting there looking for it. We press a lot more than people think. But Wake Forest, third and long, we pressed almost like half of the time we were in press. Especially whenever it was a single coverage. Even like I think about the first third and long that Wake Forest had, which was the Robinson forced fumble when he ripped it. And you look at Brownlee over there, and what's he doing? He's in press coverage, and he puts his guy into the dirt on the sideline. So I just don't think that's fair to say that, we're playing off all the time, because we're not. That's just inaccurate. We are pressing a lot. We did it less this game, but sorry, you got me worked up there, Nick, because I just had this whole discussion with somebody about that.
I have it written down on my paper over the couch. So I felt like going over to get it, but it was like 3rd and 5, and they were in zone and speed for like a 7 or little out route because he's so far off coverage. What was it? 3rd and 4, 7:46 left in the game. It was 3rd and 4, and they hit a 5-yard out route in zone coverage. That's where I question, the play calling situation, like having situationals. That's where I bring that up. But you and I can debate that because we're on completely different pages.
The question is like, because people keep saying that, but it's like they wanted change last week for Fuller. They wanted different stuff. They wanted adjustments. So now he runs more zone this week, and it's still not overly successful. And we tried some different things, and with what Louisville is going for, it's like, so at what point do you like, okay, well, Fuller's trying different things and he's made some adjustments and to try to hopefully work with this, because people are like, oh, why are we impressed? Because how much time I saw that a bunch on Twitter. Well, why are we impressed? We can't man cover. Why are we in man coverage? It's just like, and not to mention, like, you can point out 2 plays here and there every single time, but do you want them to run the same defense every third down? Didn't we see that at the end of Jacksonville State and at the beginning of the Wake Forest games, and the announcers say like, hey, they've been in the same defense, and and the offense, like, we got to switch it up some. We can't run the same thing every single time. We just can't. So I just don't – I don't know. Maybe it's the coach in me. I'm just like, I don't know what people want, because, if he sits there and plays in man coverage and our guys get beat, which they're going to be, because that's just how they're going to do it, because they just lack talent, then they're going to complain about, switch. Now we make switches and times different things, and still people are complaining. I just don't know what people want.
So you have Chet. What's up, Chris? On third and 3, Dotson's 9 yards off the ball. I think that's a frustration of Florida State fans, Steve. Not to read the dead horse, but
read the whole quote. Read the whole quote. Read the whole quote.
No, but I know I gotta go to this one. Hold on, I gotta go to this one. Steve, you sound like you're full of crap.
Looking at his name, I'm sure. Yeah.
So no, I think it's hard to run zone when you don't have linebackers who can cover. And
it's hard to run man when you have corners who can't cover.
Yep. So
we can play that game.
Therein lies my begging of the coaching staff to put back a nickel, but that's for another day. So, this is a post-game chip-up with Nate Steve on the Force of College Football. Florida State goes on to 0-4 for the first time since 1974, losing to Louisville 31-23. Mackenzie Milton had a chance to pull out another quarter comeback, throws in late on. Let's talk about that last play. I thought that Parchment could have done a better job playing defense, but it looks like that he was hand fighting with the defensive back and lost a little bit of his balance. So I don't know, man. Like, I just felt he could have done a better job of playing defender at that point.
Yeah, but I mean that's the kind of stuff that we've seen for years over and over. We just had issue after issue, and people just there's a play to be had, or we can do something a little bit better. And in a crucial, and I think it was Staples that was talking about how situationally this team is so terrible, and it has been for 4 or 5 years. And that's not something that's easily coached out of people. It's just not. And you really change that through years of culture and change, So in that situation, you're absolutely right. Could he have played he could have played his defense a little bit better and, and at least try to knock the ball down. It looks like he just went straight for a tackle, like go for the ball, knock it down. So, is it the best of throws or anything? Certainly not. But, go up, knock the ball down, give us a couple more. Give us some more chances, and he just didn't. And they get the interception, and situationally we proved to suck again. So.
Mm-hmm. So Clemson goes on today. Clemson drops to 2-2. Well, what a year for FSU to start 0-4, and a year that the conference is wide open, But can Nova rally the troops and have the guys ready to play next week? I think so, but I don't think Florida State is anywhere winning the conference if that's what you're applying, Gregory. That chance is gone.
I think there's a chance we can build on this. I think there's a chance we can build on this second half and come out and play, well against Syracuse. But we've said that a lot the last few years. Like, all right, well, that's a good second half. That's a good game. We can build on that. We said it against Notre Dame, Jacksonville State, suck. We said it last year against North Carolina. I think we came out Louisville, suck. So there's been a lot of those instances like, okay, that's something we can build on. That's something we can build on. We just never build on that. And maybe this time will be different. Maybe this will be the time that we actually build and, and build on something and actually, come out and show up against Syracuse and have a great game. There are a few things I say that look a little bit different in terms of we cut down a lot on penalties this game.
That was great.
It was great.
Only 3 penalties, I think.
Yep. And just in general, there was like last week I talked a lot about the mental lapses that this team has constantly had. We had a lot less mental lapses this week. We still had some bonehead things and we still said some things, but I think some of those is just a personnel issue. But as far as like just mental lapses, it seemed to me there happened to be, and I'll see more on We Watch, when I watch the game tomorrow. It seemed to me like we had a lot less of those this game. And if that's a trend and not just a one-off thing, then you might see against Syracuse, we continue that trend. And, Syracuse is not as talented as Louisville is. So some of those talent deficiencies won't necessarily show up as much against Syracuse. So if we continue the lack of mental errors and not committing those against Syracuse, we could see a completely different team.
So real quick. Hold on. I got to mute this guy in the chat. He's going to timeout. So here's a couple quotes from Norvell in the post game. No, they're not bad. Norvell on FSU not being able to complete the second half rally. We had our chances. We just got to finish. Kind of what we talked about. Norvell Atkins telling him make some of the second adjustments to help the FSU running game come to life. Let's talk about this one for a second. Norvell on 0-4. At the end of the day, this is what the that's not where it's at. It's where we are. It's where we are. It's what we've earned.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean,
Norvell
at the end
thinks
of the
that
day,
FSU's earned 0-4, and I agree. They've earned it.
Yeah, we've earned 0-4 through a lot of different mistakes by a lot of different people's players and coaches. We've earned 0-4, and that's where we're at, and that's what we are. We're 0-4, and we can say, oh, it's a great second half, but at the end of the day, it's still a loss. And we talked about that earlier. Same thing, Notre Dame. Oh, it's a great moral victory. Okay, but it's still a loss. Same thing, Wake Forest and Jacksonville State. At the end of the day, you can talk, and that's what part of this is. We're talking about what the issues are and what can be fixed, what can't be fixed, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's a loss, and we're 0-4, and that's who we are. I think Milton said something similar too. At the end of the day, like after the Jacksonville State, at the end of the day, that's what this team is, and that's where we're at. And yeah, can it change and get better throughout the year? Absolutely, but that's where we are at. 4 games in, we're 0-4, and that's what this team is, and it's our fault.
Mm-hmm. One thing I've been kind of beating this drum for a little bit on our own personal at I was in the wide receiver. In high school, he was a very, very talented wide receiver. Had 70 catches, over 1,000 yards, and a ton of touchdowns. Mississippi State recruited him as a DB. Florida State's looking for someone that can bring some athleticism to the offense. Do they make the move? Is it a waste of time?
I don't think
already, but make it know what you think, Steve.
I don't think it's I don't think they'll make the move, but I don't think it'd be a waste of time, because that's something like with offense, like that's something that you can put him in, let's say you make the move. He's a great athlete. It's something to where, okay, maybe he's not ready at receiver to really play a full game or anything like that, but you can get him in packages and get the ball in his hands a few times a game to where he can still make a difference. He can play 10 snaps a game on offense, touch the ball 5 times in certain situations and not have to worry about all the intricacies of playing receiver. So that's something that could happen, and then maybe, you got Syracuse and then North Carolina, then you get the bye week, I think, after that, then maybe after 4 or 5 weeks, maybe he can step in a little bit of a bigger role after the bye week. So it definitely wouldn't be a waste of time, because at least not as big of a waste of time as him stepping out there on defense. That's a huge waste of time, personally. But, which I'm guessing he was hurt today, because I didn't see him at all out there today. So either he was hurt or he completely got benched. Correct. He was hurt, yeah. Because I think the fourth corner that came in was Omarion Cooper, and didn't look good. That's why I caution people about saying, oh, let's just play the young guys. You get that sometimes. You play those young guys, you're going to get mistakes, and he was the reason for that, one of those touchdowns. So, but yeah, I'd move him personally.
Yeah, you look at him, and he's kind of a player, and he's not really physical, but he's a great athlete, and I agree with you. You give him 10, 15 and a couple pounds, and let him see what he can do. One thing I want to bring up too, as we start to wrap this up, Jarvis Brownlee said that miscommunication in the defense is what hurt them early. We're 4 games in now. At one point does miscommunication stop?
Uh, it just depends sometimes, especially when you're doing a new scheme and stuff like that, which, the last 3 years we were running so much quarters. And this year we've been running a lot of cover 2-man, cover 1 robber and stuff like that. So realistically, this is what, 4 games in. And so,
It's still 4 games, Steve.
It's 4 games, but people like doing scheme changes and stuff like that. It's not uncommon for most teams to have, 5, 6, the whole first season still having communication issues and stuff like that. So, I prefer that they get cleaned up, but it seems they got cleaned up in the second half. How much of that is maybe Williams coming in? I don't know, but it's not uncommon to see those kind of, miscommunications in the secondary and stuff like that. If you look at Robinson a lot, he's constantly turning around and yelling at the other defensive backs and trying to communicate calls and stuff like that to them. So I think a lot of it is, and a lot of time he's looking back at like other corners. I think that's where a lot of miscommunication is some of those corners just aren't getting, for whatever reason, they're not getting it. Because I see Robinson an awful lot, especially on like third downs and stuff like that, turning around, yelling at them and stuff like that. So, and some of it, I think the communication isn't so much like people hear, communication issues, and they think, the coach isn't getting the call in quickly enough, or coach isn't communicating what he wants and stuff like that. I think a lot of it is recognition. And what I mean by that is the secondary lines up, they see what the offense is giving them. And, in game prep throughout the week, and when they're watching film, they have all these preset calls. Okay, well, we have this look in the situation. This is what it is. And I think that's where the communication issues are. And that's what I think Robinson's trying to relate to him. Okay, this is what we're seeing. This is what our call is. This is what we need to expect. And I think that's where the communication is. They're just learning really how to be a good defense in that aspect, and learning how to be in coverage and being on the same page is seeing what the preset call is and trying to make sure they're all on the same page with that. I just think they're struggling some with that at times. And that's not uncommon. It sucks. It's frustrating, but it's not uncommon. It doesn't appear to me to be, okay, coach called cover 2, but some people are in cover 1 and he's in cover 2, and they're having issues with that. I think it's more of seeing, okay, we got trips to this side, we got single coverage over here, it's 3rd and 2. What are we supposed to be in? And I think that's where it is. Because, I'm not sure how much people are aware, but, it's same thing on offense. Like, so much of play calls is like done prep during the week. And, okay, we'll get these different looks. Here's the things that we're going to do. And, and it takes a leader on the field, which it seems to be Robinson's the one in our secondary that's making a lot of those calls to make sure everybody's on the same page and everybody's in the same look and doing the same thing. I think there's some communication issues there. I think maybe, for instance, maybe Jay is seeing something different than Robinson's seeing. So he thinks they're supposed to be, expecting this. And so he does XYZ, whereas Robinson does ABC because he's seeing this. So does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. So let's put a bow on Florida State Louisville and wrap this up. So Florida State sits 0-4. Let's address recruiting first, and then we'll finish this up. But I know there's going to be a lot of freakouts on Twitter and social media about recruiting. But one thing I see here is that you have seen some improvement at certain spots in this team, and this coaching staff has been blatantly honest with the recruits about what they need to move forward. Real quick, if you look at the class, what do you think that Florida State needs to finish up at? I don't know if it was this podcast or the No Game Day podcast. I was talking about how, in my opinion, Kevin Coleman is the most important recruit in this class, with an ability to stretch the field and have a playmaker outside. So when you look at, who they have committed, what they need to address, as early signing day comes and as we head into January, February, I look at Coleman number 1, Jones Jr. number 2, and then I look at Pritchett number 3 as the three most important guys on the board. And with a little asterisk of getting Hill on campus in January. What do you think?
Yeah, I would probably put Pritchett ahead of Pritchett or Mella, either one of those ahead of Jones, but Coleman, getting Coleman is such a need, but isn't the word right now, the rumor is that Hill's good to go and he's here in January? Like, isn't that a done deal pretty much?
It's never a done deal, Steve, till it's dry, right?
Touche. But, getting either Coleman or Hill here and then getting Pritchard or Armella, one of those guys here to be able to man one of the tackle spots, which both of them are good enough to where they can step up in almost immediately and be good to go. I've seen enough from McClendon to say, okay, if we don't get Jones, it's not as big, because I think McClendon can be a good player for us next year on the edge. Obviously, getting Jones would be significantly better. But what'd you say, Fuller? Please don't tell me you said Fuller.
No, I said I told you about McClendon.
Yes. So, but I mean, still to me, the number one is number one and number two. No matter what we get from here on out, is going to be Hunter and Duffy. Getting that elite quarterback and getting a game changer, and people keep asking corner or receiver for Hunter. To me, it's a easy answer. He plays corner full time, and he gets packages in on offense. He can affect the field on both sides. It's and we can utilize both. Period. That's it. So we got to get Hunter. Hunter's in. There's no mistake about it. But he would. I don't want to say it, but it wouldn't surprise me if we were 2-2 right now if we had Hunter.
3-1.
3-1. Okay.
4-0.
4-0. Forget it. 4-0.
Number one in the country. Which have us on.
Yeah.
No, but let's take one more question, because I think this is something we should off on. Vince says we can't fire effing coaches every 2 years. Position coaches are a part of this as well. Offensive, defensive coordinator, and Norvell. You can't do this every 2 years, because you're not going to get a coach with a damn to come coach for you if you're only going to give them 24 games to win. And for FSU, their expectation of winning is conference titles and competing in the college playoff. No coach would come with the way the program is right now if you only give him 24 games. You have to give Norvell his time. He's doing what he needs to do off the field with recruiting. He's busting his hump to work on a really underdeveloped across the board on the field, in the weight room, academically. There's just a lot of issues across the board for this program. You have the admin that's finally kind of bought back into the football side of things, but you turn over coaches every 2 years. Coordinators, they happen once in a while, whether you lose a coach or a guy gets promoted, but you cannot fire Norvell. I don't think FSU has any consideration of firing Norvell. If he goes 1-11, 2-10, he'll be on the hot seat, no doubt. But they're not going to fire him; they can't afford to.
No, yeah, if we were to fire Norvell this year, what's our selling point? Hey, name an elite coach. Hey, why don't you come to Florida State, where we're not going to give you the things you want, like we didn't give to Jimbo Fisher, who won a national championship for us. We're not going to give you the coordinators and money to get whatever you want. We're not going to do it. We're going to hire you to come in and fix the mess, and after a year and a half, we're going to fire you, and then hire another coach and tell him, look, we have a huge mess. We're going to give you time, and then after 2 years, fire him. Who's coming to that? What coach in their right mind is going to say, okay, well, this Florida State's not going to give me the money I need to hire the elite coordinators and get a football-only facility and all that stuff, and then fix a mess that they're not going to give me time to fix. What kind of selling point is that? Even like if you look at coordinators, okay, look, we have talent deficiencies. You need to come here and fix this in year one. If you don't, then we're going to fire you and get another coordinator in here and not get the recruits. What kind of selling point is that? Like, you know, that's why I say, like, who are we going to get with, you know, Fuller? Hey, all right, we fire Fuller. You know, we got XYZ defense coordinator. You're elite. Why don't you come here? Yeah, we have issues at defensive line. We have issues at linebacker, and we have issues at cornerback. You need to fix it in year one. Who's coming? Who's coming? You know, that's my biggest question is who wants to come to that? Who wants to? You know, I mean, maybe on defensive side of things, okay, hey, we got Travis Hunter coming. He's coming. Sam McCall is coming. Maybe he plays receiver. Maybe he plays safety. They're coming. Okay, so you have that selling point, but you still have deficiencies at linebacker and whatchamacallit, and you've proven over the last 4 years that you're not going to give them time to develop their offense and develop their talent. You know, we put ourselves in this situation. Administration put ourselves in this position, and it's not a good one. But that's where we're at. So,
yep, fully agree. So, all right, Steve. So Florida State loses to Louisville 31-23. They dropped to 0-4 for the first time since 1974. Like, posting Steve at the Voice of College Football. Make sure that you listen to College Football every Wednesday at 8 p.m. the call-in show. Follow us, Nate Greer 26 on Twitter and SP Noel 51. If you're listening, make sure you hit the like button. Any likes we get are greatly appreciated. We got Syracuse next week. Hopefully, we can get on that. Get on the scoreboard with a W. But you know, as always, we appreciate you listening in, giving us your questions and comments. And 0-4.
0-4.
As always, go Noles.
Go Noles.
All right. Next.